Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about the access modifiers that you would use in Java programming language. And there are four access modifiers: private, default, protected, and public. By using these access modifiers, you can make your classes secure the way you want them to be. Private is the most restrictive access modifier, and when you define the class members as private, those members are only available within class, and outside of the class, they won't be available for use and accessibility. The next one is default. So if you do not define an access modifier to the members, by default, the default permissions will be applied. And the other name of default is you would have here is package private, which means that yes, within the class the members will be accessible. Within the package also the members will be accessible. And outside of the package, even with the classes being subclasses, those members won't be accessible. So that's default for you. Protected, although by the name protected you might feel that protected is more stronger in comparison to the package private or the default permissions, but protected is slightly relaxed in comparison. It also enables the subclasses outside of the package to access the protected members. So that's the difference between protected and default. The next one is public, which is super relaxed. Everything within the class is accessible within the class. It is accessible within the package, outside of the package as well. So the usual programming guideline is that you should define access permissions uh, to what you need, which means that you should be as restrictive as possible. If you do not want the class members to be used outside of class, you have to define them as private. And I have also listed down, some examples which would give you insight about where to use which type of access modifier. So for private, you would have seen, class properties generally is a good example. You would like, the properties to be defined as private so that only the class members or methods can operate on those private properties. You could keep the methods as public, and the properties as private so that the behavior of how those properties will be set is driven by the methods which are defined in the class. Default, if you want to keep things little relaxed, but within the same package, you know that there won't be any issue if you do not define anything and want the default permissions to be applied. You could do this, but as I said, you should be as restrictive as possible. You should define permissions just the way you need them and not like by default you should have more permissions to your class members. Protected, this is where where you want subclasses and other packages to have access to the inherited members, and those subclasses would like to change the behavior of those methods. An example here is, say you have a temp worker class and that has a set minimum age of working method defined as protected. And there is some functionality to that method that is defined in the base temp class, temp worker class. But say, in the other department, in the other department code packages, there is a need to use the temp worker in other classes. So you could just import the packages and you could inherit from the temp worker class from the base packages and define the behavior of this new inherited method, which otherwise would not have been possible. So, in such cases, you could define some methods or properties as protected. Public is where, all, like, the example is that class methods, that the instances of class, can call from anywhere. So, which is basically You want to define the methods which are defining the mechanism of how the properties of the class will be changed. If you don't do this, then if the class object is created outside of the package, you won't be able to use much of the functionality. The class, mostly in those cases, the object created from class in that cases um, would be of less use. So that is why you define methods in the class as public. Anyways, and these are very basic examples, but knowing what these access modifiers are, you could select which access modifier to use and when. With this, now we will go to the demo of, where we will spend some time looking at the access modifiers and see that, what type of errors, etc., you would get if you do not specify the right access modifier and try to use it. Okay, so first up, what I have here is, let me just close this thing. So in my project, I have a class person, which you can assume most like a base class for the example that I'm going to show to you. And in this, I'm just setting up, at this moment, I have not specified any access modifier, so which means that it is package private at the moment. And all the functions that I have set are private. The constructor is public, as otherwise, you won't be able to create object of a person class. Okay, and this is my main where I'm creating a person object. So now it is giving me an error that this has private access in the base package person. So if a method is private, it will only be accessible within the class. And that is why this is giving me a compile time error here. And it is saying that, the access is not correct there. So if I go here and I just delete private, now it will become, package private, which means within the same package, I can have access to set age. Now the error has gone away. So this is the example where, how the package private and private permissions are different. Okay. So the next access modifier is the protected one. And that access modifier is, in my view, is the most interesting one. Referring back the example that I mentioned earlier of temp worker class. So I have created this temp worker class in base package, and I have mentioned this class as public because I want to create a subclass of this class in a different package, which is, other base package over here. In this particular class, what I have is a protected integer property for manage for working. And along with that, I have the getters and setters methods as protected too. Now let's move to the temp worker other, which is a class in a different base package. And I am extending a temp worker for this class so that, we can create the temp worker other as a subclass for temp worker. To do that, I have to first import the temp worker class because it is in different package. So after doing import, I am extending it here. And in the constructor, what I'm doing is I'm just creating an object of this parent class temp worker. And I'm calling set min age for working, which is a protected method in this particular class. So by mentioning that method as a protected one, this subclass has visibility for this particular method, and that is why it is not resulting in an error. But at the same time, I have to define behavior for this class, which I'm doing here. So I am defining it as the setter as if the department provided is IT, I will set the min age for working to 30. And the getter method is just returning this property here. In the temp worker class, the behavior that I have is only for is looking for department is equal to HR. Now, in the main class, to see the protected in action, what I've done is I've created an object of temp worker other, and the moment I do that, whatever I had in the constructor would run, and which is you setting up that property of set manage for working to 30 for IT. And now I am looking at this particular statement is just a print statement, and in that I'm just printing the manage for working. So the response that I should have here is manage 30 because that is what I had. I called the this particular method with IT, and so manage should be 30. So let me just run it now. And there it is. Manage is equal to 30. So that is how you use protected access modifier. Now the last access modifier is the public one. And to demonstrate the public access modifier, I would again go back to the person class. So as of now, this is class is public. Let me just remove the public modifier from here to demonstrate what public would do for us. Now this class being, without any access modifier, this is package private. So any class in the particular package should be able to access all the members for this particular class. But the classes outside of this package, those will have difficulties accessing it. And in this one, let's just try to create an object for person class and let's see what happens. So first, let me just import base package.person, and in my constructor, let me create a new person object. Okay. So since the person class is private, I don't think we should be able to access person, and that is what it says also. Person is not public in base package, cannot be accessed from outside package. So this is what warning you will get if you try to do so. If you build it, you will get an error, a build error, and there it is. It is not public in base package, cannot be accessed from outside package. So now if you go back here and you make it public, that error has now gone, and you can access person class from a class which is defined in a different package. There it is. So, the build has completed successfully. So with that, I would end this video. I hope you have found this video informative. Do let me know if you have any questions for me, and I will try to get back to you as early as possible.